The last item on this agenda is the St Peter's Church potential sources of funding, item 29. You're happy to move? Yeah. And seconded by Anne.
Can I just make a comment?
Yep.
We do, and possibly move an amendment. It is on. The amount, there are two things suggested here. This went to the Heritage Grant Committee, and the Heritage staff did not like the approach, despite the fact that it had been approved by Heritage New Zealand. So had it got a Heritage grant, this would have been a great deal more than 100,000 for such a significant building in Riccarton, or in Church Corner. This is basically the foundation stone of the Church Corner, and fulfills not just a major heritage function, but as we discovered and as we knew when we went to visit them, a major community development function in the Church Corner area. I'd like to see us give more than $100,000. The loan won't be helpful to the group. They can't afford to take up a loan. This is a huge redevelopment project, and probably the most significant heritage and community asset in that part of Christchurch. It fulfills a massive role in terms of providing for the community in that area. It does a huge amount of work. I don't think 100,000 is adequate. I would much prefer to take it out of the Heritage Grant and basically have a fight with the Heritage people because I don't agree with what they're doing. But given that we're not going down that path and we're going down capital endowment, that's totally fine. But it needs to be at least 150 or 200,000. 100,000 goes nowhere in terms of getting this project up and running. You're expecting a very hard-working group of community people who are really focused on helping that community, which is a very diverse community, to actually go out and raise millions, which we're not expecting in other areas. I mean, if had our heritage people had a different view, this would have probably got 300,000 or 400,000 from heritage.
So, sorry, where in the report does it say that Heritage New Zealand support this amendment?
So it was in the report. So some of the work has been done in conjunction with other agencies. They've had heritage support for the work that they've done to date, not from our staff, and they've had a heritage grant from the previous Canterbury earthquake, whatever it was called.
Yes, I know, but you said that Heritage New Zealand supported this.
As I understand,
this change to the buildings.
As I understand it, there was support from Heritage New Zealand. I may be wrong on that, and it doesn't say it in the report because that was the one that came to the heritage people. But there are two views of heritage. One group is saying this is fine. Our staff are saying no, it's not. My major concern is not that. My major concern is that this needs to be done, and the 100,000 is inadequate from a community viewpoint in order to make it happen. So I'm not really wanting to get into the heritage debate.
Right, okay, questions. Yep. Sarah and then Raf.
So because it's, I'd quite like to foreshadow a motion that would be going back to the original heritage grant and approving funding out of the heritage grant rather than capital endowment.
Well, we already had a resolution.
It was deferred for reconsideration as part of this one. Sorry. It wasn't declined, it was deferred. So I'd like to go back to that.
Where's the actual wording of the...
The first time was on the 6th of September. The staff reported to the social and the community development committee.
Okay, right,
yeah.
All right.
So I'd just like to foreshadow that. If it fails for capital endowment, which I'll be speaking to, then I'd like it to go to heritage.
I would rather that, I understand that there are divided views on heritage.
Yeah. Raf. Yeah.
Okay, so when I looked at this, the first question was, why is this not going through the heritage process? Because this is a heritage grant. And why? Well, it's okay. So then, why is it coming through the?
Yeah, because it said that the council, given the significance of St Peter's Church, defer consideration of the heritage incentive funding application. Read 1.3, para 1.3, on page 845.
We went through the committee and here.
Yes.
So that's why
I wouldn't have
here.
thought this was something for the endowment fund. But I had a question. Did we give any money to St Barnabas in its development, or any other churches?
We have done in the past through the Earthquake Relief Fund.
To the
Earthquake Relief Fund.
Andrew?
I might put the question that Raf's asked in a slightly different way. What was the reason for the recommendation from staff in the original report that this item not be funded by way of a heritage incentive grant?
Well, I don't want to go back to that. We debated that for hours and we ended up with deferring it.
It was a
But
modern
if people are suggesting
It's
that
a
we
modern
should go
extension.
back to a heritage incentive grant,
Yes.
then the original reasons why that wasn't acceptable need to be made known to, for example, Raf, who wasn't in the original meeting.
Yeah, but
When it came to
I
council.
mean, I'm happy for the question not to be answered.
Can I make a point of order? In fact, it's been flagged by Sarah that in fact that we go back to that original recommendation. I think it's really important that the whole council understand the staff's recommendation and the committee's decision at the time. And so I think Councillor Turner's question
it was the
is really
council
important.
that, excuse me, the council made the decision to defer it.
That's right.
And they requested that the committee report back to council on alternative sources of funding, which is what this report is. So, and this is the alternative that they come up with.
No,
and what I'm
they
hearing is that some people are okay with that and other people are not. And if this is not accepted, then we go back to consider the heritage incentive funding application. Because there was a view from staff that it was a modern addition, it didn't meet the requirements of the heritage, but what we're hearing now is that Heritage New Zealand possibly took a different view, and I haven't seen that written down anywhere. So, Cecile.
Okay. There might be a few things I can help clarify there. So this report has followed that earlier resolution, which was to defer the decision on the document that you'll see in attachment C, which is the full report that was considered previously. That has all of that discussion and the advice that was provided by Heritage staff at that time. One of the points that you're coming across there in terms of where the support has differed or the opinions have differed is you've got a couple of different processes operating. One is that you've got the strengthening, repair and additions consented through a resource consent process, and then you've got a process which is considering the works against the operational guidelines of the Heritage Incentive Grants policy. So in relation to that policy, there's a number of criteria that are not met, and that's what that report covers. So of those, there's 3 criteria as a whole that are not met, and another 2 in part. That's of a total of 7 criteria. So that was really the basis of that earlier advice, which is at attachment C. So I think that's important to just understand where those differences can arise. Hence, staff came back with a number of options for you to consider today, which are the alternative sources of funding that have been considered and could now be looked at beyond those that St Peter's themselves have also applied for, which you'll see in the report.
Yeah.
Can I just give notice of an amendment to move the Capital Endowment Fund from 100 to say 150?
Right, yeah. I mean, you can move that as an amendment.
Yeah, I would like to.
Up front.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yeah. But if the mover and seconder were happy with 150, then they could just accept that into
I'm
the
very happy
resolution.
with 150. Yes, very happy to support that.
Okay. So, question. So who was, I mean, I've got Pauline, but who else? Yanni had his hand up before. Yanni?
So I appreciate this is a difficult situation because we want action on this, but I'm really concerned that we've asked for a process around the Capital Endowment Fund and we still don't have one. And I've got other groups who have been keen to come and put in applications or get consideration, and we don't seem to have any process. When is the process for the Capital Endowment Fund coming back to us so we can weigh up all the different requests for external funding in a way that we can see what the needs are in our community?
Soon.
Funding review.
Yes.
So the grant here is changed in terms of the it being moved and seconded. So it was moved by Jimmy, wasn't it? Seconded by Anne.
Yep.
And that is increased to 150,000.
Yeah.
Right, so just so I'm clear, so for the remaining 300,000 before 1st of July next year, we're going to have a process in April, March?
Well, they said the first quarter of next year.
So that's before the end of March.
Right.
Yeah.
So around how we allocate the remaining quantum.
Yeah.
Cool. And if groups have more urgent things, then we just get them to come to council.
Well, no, this has come through because of the challenges around the Heritage Incentive Grant. But look, yeah, I mean, look, it is coming back to us. We've got all of our grants are subject to a funding working group review at the moment. So we're just, we're a bit behind schedule as far as that's concerned. But
well, I'll just tell the groups to come direct to council. I guess
no,
that's
don't go
just
telling groups to come to council. If you can, please just hold off until the new year.
But it might be too late for some of them. So, but anyway, just the other question that I had with staff is we've made, I think it was a bit like Raf's point, we've made other grants to churches. I think, for example, PIC, and I just wanted to get a sense of the quantum because I'm just concerned around the kind of consistency of the grants that we're giving out and with similar, I mean, my reading of that grant was it was a similar sort of aspect. And I can't quite remember the quantum that we gave, but can you just give us some idea of the quantums that we've previously given out to churches that have got earthquake repairs that are needed?
So we did look at a number of examples because obviously comparable applications is one of those aspects we'd consider. Some of the organisations, community organisations and churches have been able to apply to funds that are no longer available. So for example, one that we looked at was St Paul's Trinity Presbyterian. We had a $100,000 grant from the Christchurch Earthquake Mural Relief Fund. That was for a multi-cultural events facility. And I guess that was a comparable one, but from another funding source. The others you might be able to...
A source that is exhausted, by the way. I mean, there's nothing left. So, it's not something that we can go back to for this one.
We didn't find, I couldn't find one listed for Knox
That's
Church,
a really
for example.
good comparison.
That's
a really good comparison. Thank you. So who else was it? Who else had questions? Pauline?
Look, I hope you haven't covered this already, but the report does say that that recommending 100 from the capital endowment and then perhaps a $500,000 loan. But do they have the means to make any loan repayments?
That would need, so the recommendation is that there's an application to apply for that loan, which would assess that. So that's part of that process. And the total that they're now seeking would be 500. So the 100 would be less that, plus any fundraising was what we imagined. So the application would take into account revised fundraising figure.
Yes, but we know that they've already done a lot of fundraising. But so would our contribution via the capital endowment money not be handed over until they'd raised the rest of it, the other, which is now 400?
I'm not sure how the conditions on that are normally set up. Are you able to clarify?
No, that would be up to you to put those conditions or not.
Well, it says subject to the total required funding being confirmed and in place and the confirmation of all necessary consents being in place before any funds are released to St Peter's Church. I think that's clear enough.
That's our 100 then, isn't it?
It's in the resolution. Yep. Sarah?
Just really quickly, with the Heritage Grant, while it didn't meet criteria, council's actually allowed to make decisions that don't meet policy as long as it gives reasons for it, isn't that right?
Yes, you would need to be clear on what the inconsistency is and the reasons for the inconsistency. So that relates to the criteria that I mentioned before. But also remember that in the Heritage Incentive Grant Fund there isn't much funds remaining this year. There's approximately $135,000 and there is a grant currently lined up for the committee on the 6th of December to consider that.
So if other heritage buildings come for their grant and there is none left, is it likely that the committee, I don't know, you might not be able to speak for the committee clearly, but is there the potential for those other ones then, because there's no funding left there, to try and access capital endowment as well? Is this precedent setting in that way?
Not in my understanding. I think most of those types of applicants would be encouraged to get ready for applications in the new financial year.
Should there be funding?
Should there be funding
in the
through the
LTP?
LTP?
Yeah. Glenn and then Phil. 428.
Yeah, I've just sent around the that Heritage New Zealand letter. So we have a problem because we have disparate information. So we have Heritage New Zealand supporting.
We've had this asked and answered. It was crystal clear from staff. They're two separate processes.
Yep.
So,
okay,
you know, asked and answered that question.
Okay. All right. My question is what to do with different information.
On a different matter. It was around the resource consent. I mean, did I hear that wrong?
What I explained was the, I'm not going to go into the details because I wasn't the author of that report, but I think it was clear in reviewing that report that you've got two different processes, one being the resource consent process, and it has received resource consent, and there is letters of support related to that, and then you've also got other funding, heritage funding that's been provided by other organisations, and then you've got this assessment process which is against our Heritage Incentive Grant Fund. So you've got lots of different processes that go on here, and there are different views.
Yeah. Phil?
One of the councillors made a comment in relation to if we increase the amount to 150,000 from the capital endowment, was it approximately 300,000 would remain in the capital endowment fund? I just want to check that that is correct.
Yeah, if you turn to paragraph 5.5, that outlines the funding in the capital endowment fund. So the total currently, so that's 17-18 financial year, would be 446. So that's the figure that we were given to work with.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a resolution in front of us. We've got a foreshadowed motion. The resolution has been moved and seconded, so I will put that motion. Oh, yes, Jimmy Chen.
If you review the today's report compared to the 6th of September report, this one is more positive because you will recall the 6th of September report. During the social and the community development committee, I was only one against the original staff the report because why because the application was not compliant with the heritage, the standard and the criteria. But I thought why in that time I against? I thought that's too kind of passive, inactive. As a council, we should working together closely as a partnership with the community. So today I saw this report. I'm very happy. Even it's not perfect, but it's optimistic report. Because while we find a resolution, we have engaged, we listened to the community, their voices, their concern. Especially if we review their report, actually this is St. Peter's Church Hall, the facility, not only the provide service for their church, the members only. Actually, they provide for the wider the community groups and the individuals. So we can see here, even per year, is more than 20,000 people engage with them. And also I remember some of our the kind of committee members, we was in there. We listened to their voices. It's quite significant. I assume, maybe Yanni or the Phil, the Glenn or Anne, the Vicky, very impressed, done the great job, provide excellent services. So even in here, but we grant funding today is $150,000, but still have a gap for $350,000. But we can encourage them to make an application for the council, the community loan, etc. Still can fill the gap. So that's why I'm happy to move this one. Encourage all our fellow council to fully support this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
I will keep this really brief. I'm in complete support of St Peter's getting funding from council. I just don't believe that this is the place for it. It should be heritage funding. It's a heritage listed building. While our staff have one view, there are other experts who work in the heritage area who have a different view, and I'm of the view that we should be making a decision outside of policy to give heritage grant funding instead of capital endowment. I worry that this sets a precedent for other buildings that don't qualify for one grant to come to council for capital endowment each time.
Mike, Yanni, anyone else? Anne, Dion, everyone would like to have a wee go. Sorry, I mean it's not fair to the people that are here.
Yeah, but I'll be quick too, because I won't be supporting this one. I'll support the Sarah's foreshadowed motion, because along the lines of what Sarah said, actually I don't think it should be coming out of this fund. It should be coming out of Heritage Fund, and time again we have seen heritage grants come through the council that we have approved even though they have not been consistent with policies. Time and time again, sometimes they actually go against 3 policies. So we've done it before, and this is clearly a heritage building. The strengthening of this work is purely to actually save that heritage building and protect the fabric. So we shouldn't be doing it from here. We should be going back to the Heritage Incentive Fund and doing it from there.
Sorry, who was next? Yanni, and then Anne.
I'll be really quick. I actually support it coming out of the Capital Endowment Fund. I remember when the Capital Endowment Fund was set up, there was a big discussion about how it should be spent. Options at the time considered were to give everyone in the city a little piece of money, or actually to retain it and put it towards community and economic development type projects. And sadly, most of that funding went to economic development, but here today we've got actually what I think is a really good example of community development. I think it's important to recognise that this is not ratepayer funding. This is funding that was set up from a sale of one of our company's subsidiaries, and it was put into a pot to be able to do what I think we're being asked to do today, which is support those community projects that have a significant impact in local areas of the city. So I'm really happy that the Capital Endowment Fund is used in this way. It's consistent with what we did after the earthquake, when we took the interest off it and put it back through the community boards with a process to help those communities that had really suffered from the earthquake. And that's why I've asked about getting that process on track again, so that we know that there's more needs out there, and it would be good to have a process where others can also access that funding. But this is exactly what I think the Capital Endowment Fund should be used for. It will have a big impact in a local area of the city, which is important.
And
I totally agree with what Yanni's just said, and I think we need to just, yes, it is a heritage building, but more importantly, it is a community building, and this community needs this space to strengthen and enhance what it does. So more than happy to approve 150,000.
Very good. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. So that's Sarah and Mike. That's carried. Thank you very much. Oh, and an abstention from Raf Manji. Thank you.